Take a look at your clematis right now. Go on. Really look at it. If it's thinning out, drooping in the afternoon heat, maybe even turning black on one stem, your first instinct is probably to grab the pruners, or worse, to just give up on it. Don't, because right now, in July, your clematis isn't dying. It's talking to you, and most gardeners never learn how to listen. Here's the thing. Nobody tells you a clematis that looks completely dead collapsed overnight. Leaves gone black. That one stem that looks like someone shut off its water supply can come roaring back within weeks. Not because you did something heroic, but because you didn't do the one thing that actually kills it for good. So stick with me for the next few minutes, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what your clematis needs this month. What to leave alone completely, and how to tell the difference between a vine that's resting and one that's actually in trouble. And before we get into it, drop your growing zone in the comments. Clematis behaves differently in zone 4 than it does in zone 9. And I want every single thing here to actually apply to your garden. Let's get into it. Every clematis grower has heard the phrase, heads in the sun, feet in the shade. It sounds simple enough. So, most people do exactly half of it. They plant the vine somewhere sunny, watch it climb toward the light, and never think about the root zone again. That's the mistake. And in July, it's the mistake that quietly costs you the most. Here's why. Clematis develops a shallow network of feeder roots that sit close to the soil surface, nowhere near as deep as you'd expect from a vine that can climb 10 feet or more. And in the middle of July, when the afternoon sun is hammering down for hours at a time, that top layer of soil doesn't just get warm, it gets hot. Hotter, often, than the air above it. Picture this for a second. You're standing in your garden at 2 in the afternoon. The air feels warm, maybe uncomfortable, but bearable. Now imagine the soil just a couple of inches down is baking at a temperature you'd never want to touch with a bare hand. That's what your clematis roots are sitting in. And they can't move. They can't seek shade on their own. They just sit there, cooking. While the top of the vine looks perfectly fine to you, the plant does respond, just not in a way that immediately points back to the roots. Flower production slows down. Leaves lose some of that deep, rich color you saw back in spring. New shoots grow more slowly than they should. And during a real heat wave, flower buds can fail to develop properly at all. Most gardeners see those symptoms and think not enough water, or maybe not enough sun. Rarely do they think the soil itself is too hot. The fix isn't complicated, and it doesn't involve moving the plant or rethinking your whole garden. Keep 2 to 3 inches of mulch, shredded bark, or compost. Both work well around the base of the vine. That layer insulates the soil, holds moisture, and keeps root zone temperatures from swinging as wildly through the day. Just leave a small gap right around the crown itself. Piling mulch directly against the stems traps moisture there instead. And that's an open invitation for fungal problems you really don't want to deal with in August. A lot of experienced growers take it one step further and plant low. Spreading companions right at the base, hardy geraniums, heucheras, or creeping phlox, all work beautifully. You're not shading the vine itself. You're shading the one part of the plant that's actually struggling in July, the roots hidden just beneath the surface. Get this one habit right, and you've solved the problem most gardeners never even know they have. But roots aren't the only thing working against you this month. There's a second mistake almost every gardener makes, and it happens with a pair of pruning shears in hand. If chapter 1 was about what's happening underground, this one is about what's happening right in front of your eyes on the flowers, and on the tips of every new shoot climbing your trellis. Let's start with the flowers, because this is where most gardeners unknowingly sabotage themselves. The moment a clematis flower fades, the plant doesn't just sit there. It immediately shifts gears and starts pouring energy into producing seed heads, those fluffy, silvery clusters you might have noticed later in the season. And honestly, They're beautiful. Some gardeners leave them on purpose for exactly that reason. But here's what nobody tells you. Making those seed heads costs the plant real resources. Resources that could otherwise go into fresh shoots, or for the large-flowered hybrids that naturally bloom twice a year into that second flush of flowers everyone's hoping for. Leave every faded bloom in place, and you're essentially asking your clematis to choose between decorative seed heads now or a second round of color in a few weeks. Most gardeners don't realize they're the ones making that choice for the plant. Every single day, they don't deadhead. The fix takes about 30 seconds per flower. Follow the faded bloom stem down to the first strong pair of healthy leaves, and make one clean cut just above that leaf joint. That's it. That single cut redirects the plant's energy toward new flowering growth, instead of finishing out a seed head you may not even want. Now, here's where it actually matters what you're growing. Not every clematis behaves this way. Some varieties bloom once a season and are finished. No matter what you do to them, others flower continuously on fresh growth all summer long. No deadheading required. If you don't already know which type is climbing your trellis, save the plant tag next time you buy one. It sounds like a small thing, but months from now, when this exact decision comes up, that little tag becomes genuinely useful information. Now, the second mistake, this one isn't about flowers at all. It's about the soft, green growing tips you've probably been ignoring. Everyone assumes the thick, woody stems are the part of the plant that needs attention. They're not in July. Anyway, the part that actually needs your attention right now is the new growth, those soft green shoots that can stretch several inches in a single week during active growing weather. Clematis climbs by wrapping its leaf stalks around anything thin enough to grip wire. Twine, a narrow trellis rung, even a neighboring branch it happens to bump into. Left alone, those shoots don't politely organize themselves. They tangle. They pile up in whatever spot got there first, and when a summer storm rolls through, all that tangled new growth catches the wind like a sail, twisting, snapping, sometimes tearing away from the support entirely. Once those same stems harden into woody growth later in the season, you don't get a second chance. Repositioning them at that point usually just breaks them. So spend a few minutes every week or two walking your vine. Gently guide new shoots toward the open. Empty sections of your support, instead of letting them crowd together in one corner. If you need to tie anything down, use soft ties and keep them loose. Clematis stems thicken fast during active growth, and a tight tie that felt fine 2 weeks ago can start cutting into the stem as it grows. This one habit pays off in a way most gardeners don't notice until a year or two later. Instead of every flower clustering near the top of the trellis where the growth naturally reaches first, you get blooms spread out from the base all the way to the top, a fuller, more balanced vine, instead of a bare bottom and a crowded crown. Get the cuts right, and guide the new growth while it's still soft. And you've handled two of the biggest threats to next year's flowers. But there's a third thing your clematis is trying to tell you right now, and it's written all over the leaves. Flowers come and go. Leaves stay on the vine for months. And that makes foliage one of the best early warning systems you have, if you know what you're actually looking at. Healthy clematis leaves are firm, evenly colored, and free of odd spotting. But the moment something shifts, the leaves usually show it before the flowers ever do. The trouble is, most gardeners misread what they're seeing, and that misread can cost them months of growth. Let's start with the one that scares people the most, because it doesn't need to. If the older leaves near the base of the vine are yellowing while the new growth up top stays healthy and green, take a breath. That's usually just normal aging. The plant is redirecting energy upward toward active growth, and those lower leaves are simply finishing their job. Not a problem, not a disease, just a plant doing what plants do. Uniform pale leaves across the entire vine. Though top to bottom, all at once tell a different story. That usually points to a nutrient imbalance, prolonged water stress, or compacted soil restricting the roots. Brown. Crispy edges typically show up after a stretch of intense heat, combined with inconsistent watering feast or famine at the roots. And white. Powdery patches point to powdery mildew, especially in spots where airflow around the vine is poor. Before you reach for any chemical treatment, the moment you spot a blemish, check the growing conditions first. Has a nearby shrub crowded in and blocked airflow? Is the soil staying constantly wet? Is mulch piled directly against the stems? Is there enough sun and space for the foliage to dry out after rain? Fix the environment. And most of these problems solve themselves before they ever become serious. One more thing worth checking, specifically in July, flip a few leaves over and look at the undersides. Spider mites get more active in hot, dry weather. And because they're nearly invisible to the naked eye, you'll usually spot their damage before you spot them, tiny, pale speckling. Leaves losing that rich green color. Catch it early. And keeping the soil consistently moist, while knocking the undersides of the leaves with a firm spray of water, handles most light infestations. No spray treatment needed. Now the one that brings us back to where we started this video. Few phrases make clematis growers more nervous than clematis wilt. And the instinct, the moment a stem looks limp, is to assume the disease has arrived and start cutting the whole plant down. But here's the truth. Not every wilted clematis has clematis wilt. In July, it's completely normal for a vine, especially a large flowered hybrid, to look a little droopy during the hottest part of the afternoon, then recover fully by evening or the next morning. That's just heat response, not disease, not an emergency. Real clematis wilt looks and behaves differently. Instead of gradually looking tired over several hot days, one previously healthy stem collapses almost overnight. Leaves turn black or dark brown. Flowers shrivel fast. The stem looks like its water supply was cut off entirely, while the rest of the plant stays perfectly fine. If you see that, don't panic, and don't pull the whole plant. Follow the affected stem down toward the base and cut it back several inches below the damaged section. Using clean, disinfected pruners, dispose of that material in the trash, not the compost pile. And here's the part that changes everything. Clematis is typically planted a few inches deeper than it sat in the nursery pot on purpose, so there are dormant buds sitting below soil level. When a stem is lost to wilt, those buried buds very often push out replacement growth within just a few weeks. So the vine really can come back from something that looked like death. But there's still one thing that can kill it for good, and it's not a disease at all. It's a bag of fertilizer. When the spring flower show fades and July's growth slows down, the instinct kicks in, almost automatically hit the plant with another round of fertilizer. Force it back into bloom. Get those flowers going again. It feels like the responsible thing to do. It usually backfires completely. Here's why. A high nitrogen feed produces lush, soft, fast growth that looks impressive at first glance. Long green shoots, thick foliage, but flower production actually slows down because the plant is busy investing all that energy into leaves instead of buds. You end up with a bigger vine and fewer flowers, the opposite of what you wanted. There's a second cost. One that doesn't show up right away. That soft, nitrogen-fed growth is more vulnerable across the board. More vulnerable to drought stress on a hot afternoon. More vulnerable to fungal disease when the air stays humid. More vulnerable to physical damage the moment a summer storm rolls through. You're not just trading flowers for foliage. You're trading resilience for it too. So what does your clematis actually need right now, less than you think? If your vine is growing in decent garden soil, with compost, worked in regularly, it may need very little extra feeding at this point in the season. The soil is already doing the work. Container-grown vines are the exception. Regular watering flushes, nutrients out of potting mix much faster. So, a light, balanced feed after the first flush of blooms is usually enough there. Nothing heavier. And by late July, stop feeding altogether. Every one of these vines, the goal from here isn't another growth spurt. It's steady, mature growth that supports the flowers you already have while quietly building reserves for next year. Restraint is the whole strategy for this stretch of the season. Now, one task that almost never makes it onto anyone's Clematis care list, and it can save an entire season's growth in a single afternoon. Check your supports before a summer storm checks them for you. By midsummer, your vine has likely added several feet of new growth since spring. That means more surface area, more leaf mass, more of everything for wind to catch when a storm moves through. A trellis, a length of wire. An arbor that held up perfectly fine back in April can fail without warning once that load increases. And because mature Clematis stems turn woody and brittle as the season goes on, a broken vine usually can't be repaired. It's simply gone. So take a few minutes. Check the screws, the brackets, the ties. Replace any garden twine that's gone brittle sitting in the sun all summer. And look closely for any stems rubbing repeatedly against rough wood or metal. That friction wears through the bark over time and creates an easy entry point for disease. As you guide new growth this month, the same rule from earlier applies here too. Spread it evenly across the support instead of letting it pile up at the top. That improves airflow through the whole vine, and it distributes the wind load evenly across the structure instead of concentrating all the stress in one crowded spot. Here's the bigger picture worth sitting with. July isn't just about this season's flowers. It's quietly shaping next year's display. Whether you're paying attention or not, consistent watering through dry spells, healthy, disease-free leaves, properly supported stems, moderate feeding instead of excessive feeding. Every one of those choices, made now, to build a stronger vine, capable of a better show 12 months from now. Resist the urge to keep fixing your Clematis every few days. It doesn't need constant intervention. It needs consistency, the same right conditions, held steady, week after week. So here's what it really comes down to. That Clematis you looked at earlier thinning out, drooping in the heat, maybe even one stem gone completely black. It was never asking you to save it. It was asking you to understand it. Cool the roots. Make the right cuts at the right time. Guide the new growth while it's still soft enough to listen. Read the leaves before the flowers ever have to tell you something's wrong. Hold back on the fertilizer. Check the supports before the wind does it for you. Do those 7 things, and something remarkable happens. The vine that looked half dead in July doesn't just survive. It comes back next spring, fuller, stronger, and covered in more flowers than the year before. That's not luck. That's what happens when a gardener finally speaks the plant's language instead of guessing at it. Because here's the truth. Almost nobody says out loud the best Clematis growers aren't the ones who do the most. They're the ones who know exactly when to step back and trust that what looks like the end almost never is. So go check your Clematis. Look at the roots before you look at the flowers. And trust that vine to do what it's done for 100 years before you ever planted it. If this helped you see your Clematis differently, hit subscribe. This channel goes deep on exactly this kind of plant-specific care every single week. And before you go, tell me 2 things down in the comments. Which Clematis are you growing a large flowered hybrid? A Viticella? A Montana? Something else entirely? And what's the one thing your vine is struggling with right now? I read every single comment. Your answers shape exactly what we cover next.